social institutions such as education. And so that's why pointing out this representation of celebrating Women's History Month and LGBTQ plus representation is so important within a social institution such as higher education like Sinclair. And so here I am in front of an exhibit honoring Women's History Month on Sinclair campus. And then I know this is a little blurry, but here is on the Dayton campus, we have these TVs throughout campus that flash different ads for campus events, campus resources, things like that. And so I think you can see there's a rainbow flag, even though it's blurry. Sorry, I'm a millennial. Sometimes I'm not always the best at taking selfies. But this just serves to highlight some of the different resources available to students who might identify as being a part of the LGBTQ plus community, or maybe who are just allies because you have a lot of friends who identify with that historically marginalized community. And so it's nice to see that that representation exists because it allows students with historically marginalized communities like folks from the LGBTQ plus community to feel seen, to feel accepted on campus. And so I sort of highlight that here. But again, this is just, that representation matters, and it's just another way in which we can combat some of the isms I discussed on the last slide in our campus. And all right. The other thing I want to point out here is you'll see that in terms of organizing my PowerPoint slides and having titles for each of my slides, I went with the approach of doing selfie entry 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You could also do it by week. Either way is fine as long as you stay consistent and choose one approach or the other throughout. In order to ensure that I did all 6 selfie entries, I thought it was easier to just keep it 7 through 12. But if you're doing that, make sure that the definitions and the, content you're including here properly aligns with the week that selfie entry was assigned. All right. Selfie entry 9. In this unit, we focused on family. And so I said you could do a selfie with your family again, because recall from the first half of the semester, selfie entry 1, family was one of 3 options you could choose from for that first selfie entry. I didn't do a family for my selfie entry that first week. However, I still wanted to think outside of the box for the selfie entry. It helped me to be able to connect my selfie for this week with the readings related to family. And so on that note, the key term I chose is family of procreation, which is a family that is formed through marriage. As we think about how family structures are evolving in modern Western societies, we know that many millennials and Gen Zers are cohabitating without necessarily marrying, right? We have data that's collected regularly in the United States that demonstrates that. Here is a selfie with my partner and his family. Although we aren't married, we've known each other for over 15 years, and his family is my family. Had we been married in a different generation, if we were baby boomers or the great generation, perhaps we would be a family of procreation. But we're just cohabitating, and we're celebrating the Reds game together. All right. For selfie entry 10, one of the things that we were focusing on is civic engagement. And so I chose the term representative democracy. This is a government where citizens elect officials to represent other interests. And so recall when I assigned this selfie entry item, I said one of the sort of classic ways in which you can demonstrate civic engagement is by registering to vote or actually taking a selfie when you go out to vote, right? Because we're often voting for elected officials who are going to represent our interests politically. So this is the day that I went to the public library for the first time in Des Plaines, Illinois, when I lived there last year. So that was when I lived in the Chicago area. This is where I voted when I lived there, which directly connects with the voting process and a representative democracy. I went with my sister and her kids because we both really value teaching civic engagement at a young age. Plus, going to the library is fun. And it's another way in which we can get civically engaged. Public libraries are free. They are important to support for that reason. So folks in the community have access to free knowledge and books and computers and that sort of thing. And it's important to share those resources and that love of civic engagement with young people so the next generation in our society values civic engagement. All right. Selfie entry 11. This is where you're taking a selfie at work. You can also, if you don't have a paid job, we talked about in class how you can also take a selfie doing unpaid labor, such as caregiving of children or parents or grandparents, taking care of household chores. And then that makes a nice connection to our unit on family and marriage, where we discussed Arlie Hochchild's work on the second shift and the unpaid labor that tends to be rooted in feminine chores and care work and that sort of thing. And so this is a selfie of me. Actually, it's a picture of me. Someone else took it in front of my office. And I'm dressed up like Miss Frizzle. I had a student last semester who would always joke that I looked like Miss Frizzle. And so she was a really awesome student. I wanted to put a smile on her face. So I borrowed a Miss Frizzle costume from one of my friends. I wore it to campus, and she happened to not, our paths happened to not cross that day. So I made sure to take a picture and share that with her. For this unit, I chose the term career inheritance, which is a practice where children tend to enter the same or similar occupation as their parents. Although neither of my parents were teachers, my mom was an elementary school secretary most of my life. And so most of her friends were teachers, and I would volunteer at her school starting at a young age. I used to volunteer doing tutoring, I would help in the library. I was exposed to the teaching environment at a young age regularly throughout my childhood. Thus, my mom's profession very much influenced my current occupation of being an educator, of being a professor. And I would say that that is a good demonstration of career inheritance. And then finally, selfie entry 12, I ended on our unit related to the environment. And so for this week, you were to focus on the environment and Earth Day and ways of celebrating environmental issues and things like that. I chose the key term environmental sociology. This is the sociological subfield that addresses the relationship between humans and the environment. Here I am in front of a Wright Brothers sugar maple, a tree indigenous to Dayton, Ohio. This is actually planted on the Dayton campus here at Sinclair. There's been an effort to plant them on our campus, as having indigenous plants in an area helps to improve the overall environment. When you're thinking about planning space for your organization, for your company, including and planting indigenous plants rather than invasive species helps with the overall ecosystem in your area. And so that's a way that we can sort of think about celebrating the environment and doing good for our environment that directly connects to things happening on our campus and in our community. Also including a placard like the one here that's in front of the tree helps to raise awareness about local environmental issues. And so again, thinking about like having a positive impact on environmental issues and creating positive change related to this social justice issue. This is how Sinclair is sort of doing our part. We're planting indigenous plants and trees, and we're raising awareness about these plants and trees. And then, of course, we always want to end with a conclusion. So, the things that are sort of the big takeaway for me as we finalize the final exam and really finalizing the entire selfie project, both the first half of the semester and the second half of the semester. Here are my big takeaways. We have to be more flexible logistically. So, I know when y'all did the midterm exam, there were issues logistically as far as like using Loom. And so I want to reiterate, I've tried to say this several times in all of my classes the second half of the semester, but you don't have to use Loom. I know that there were issues where the different components necessary to complete the recording for your midterm and final exam are not a part of the free version, even if you have a .edu account. And so if you want to use Zoom, we all have a Zoom account through our Sinclair login credentials. So you can download Zoom if you don't already have it. You can share your screen in a Zoom, hit record, and then record yourself with your PowerPoints that way. I know other students have given me the feedback that they're multiple platforms that are free that y'all have access to that allow you to share your PowerPoint slides and then record yourself. Someone told me that if you have a Microsoft Office account with a .edu email address, like so you could create one if you don't already have one using your Sinclair email address, you're able to share your PowerPoint slides and record yourself. And then there's some other platforms as well. So I'm not going to grade based off of the platform you use. Just know that there are multiple platforms you can potentially use where you're able to record yourself and share your PowerPoints and then have that MP4 recording uploaded for your final exam recording. If you're experiencing challenges with recording, feel free to email me and I'm happy to follow up with you. You can also attend my office hours, which that information is in the syllabus. And then the other thing is that having more flexibility with selfie entries is also important. So for the midterm exam, you had to complete 6 selfie entries and there was only 6 opportunities. Life happens. You're going to miss class sometimes, or maybe you're just zoned out and you forget to take notes when I announce what the selfie entry is for a particular week, even though you actually were in class. And so I know that can be a challenge. Also, keeping up with selfie entries when maybe you have exams and all of your other classes on one particular week can be a struggle. So, with that said, I think the second half of the semester where you had more than 6 selfie entry opportunities, that flowed a little bit better. So if and when I implement this assignment in future semesters, I think I'm going to have at least 7 opportunities for students completing selfie entries, and then I'll only require that you include 6 selfie entries for the midterm and 6 selfie entries for the final exam on your PowerPoints and in your recording. So that's the other thing. And then other than that, I look forward to feedback from you all as you finalize your final exam PowerPoint recording, because that's when I'll really be able to dig into some of the concluding thoughts that I might have and ways of sort of adapting this assignment for future semesters. By the way, I am giving a presentation on this assignment for the entire campus community the week of finals. And so if you're interested in attending that, there's going to be an in-person session on the Dayton campus. There's also a Zoom version as well. And so if you're interested in attending that, either way, in person or virtually, email me and I'll send you the link. You have to RSVP, but it's free. Other than that, here are my references. Thank you for paying attention, and I hope that you find this recording useful as you finalize your final exam for SOC 1101. I'll see you in our next class. Bye, everyone.